There is a frozen man in a museum in Italy. His skin is leathery, dark, preserved by ice for over 5,000 years. And across his body, in places that still puzzle researchers today, are 61 tattoos. Lines, crosses, small dots arranged in patterns along his joints and spine. He has been dead for 5 millennia, and his tattoos have outlived empires. You probably think of tattoos as a modern choice. A trip to a studio, a design picked off a wall, a personal statement inked into skin. But the practice of deliberately marking your own body with permanent pigment is one of the oldest continuous human behaviors we have direct physical evidence for. And the reasons your ancestors did it were far stranger, far more practical, and far more spiritually loaded than almost anything you'd guess walking into a tattoo parlor today. Let's start with that frozen man. His name, given by researchers, is Ötzi, discovered in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy, his body remarkably preserved by the ice that entombed him. Radiocarbon dating places his death at approximately 3,300 BCE, making his tattoos the oldest preserved tattoos ever directly examined on human skin. Researcher Albert Zink, who has led extensive scientific analysis of Ötzi's remains, has documented that the tattoos were created using a technique of fine incisions in the skin into which charcoal-based pigment was rubbed. The lines are simple, mostly straight, mostly parallel, clustered around his lower back, his knees, his ankles, joints that, according to analysis of his skeleton, show clear signs of degenerative wear and arthritis. This single detail changed how researchers think about the earliest tattoos entirely. Zink and his colleagues have proposed that Ötzi's tattoos may not have been decorative at all. They may have been therapeutic, a form of ancient acupuncture or pain treatment, marking the exact points on his body where he likely experienced chronic joint pain. If this interpretation holds, the very first tattoos we have physical evidence for were not about beauty or status. They were medicine, but Ötzi is not the beginning of the story. He may not even be close to it. Archaeologists have found tattooing tools, sharpened bone and antler points, alongside ochre and charcoal pigments, at sites far older than Ötzi, suggesting the practice likely predates him by thousands of years, even if the soft tissue evidence to prove it directly has not survived. Skin decomposes. Pigment in skin only survives under extraordinary preservation conditions, ice, extreme dryness, or specific burial chemistry. Researcher Lars Krutak, an anthropologist who has spent decades studying tattoo traditions across cultures worldwide, has argued that the absence of older preserved tattoos almost certainly reflects the rarity of preservation rather than the absence of the practice. The tools survive. The bodies, almost never. This matters because it reframes the entire question. The oldest tattoos we can directly see are a lower bound, not an origin point. Given that ochre, a pigment closely associated with tattooing and body decoration across cultures, appears in the archaeological record going back over 100,000 years, and given that humans were almost certainly capable of the simple technology required to puncture skin and introduce pigment long before that, many researchers suspect tattooing may be tens of thousands of years older than our oldest physical example. Let's look at what other ancient mummified bodies tell us, because Ötzi is far from alone. In Egypt, mummies dating back over 5,000 years have been found with tattoos, including a body discovered at Jebelan, predating even the famous pharaonic dynasties, bearing tattoos of a bull and a sheep-like animal on the upper arm. Researcher Daniel Antoine of the British Museum, who studied these remains using infrared imaging to reveal tattoos invisible to the naked eye on darkened mummified skin, found these to be among the oldest figurative tattoos, meaning tattoos that depict recognizable images rather than abstract lines, ever discovered. This pushed back the timeline for symbolic, image-based tattooing by centuries. In Siberia, the frozen tombs of the Pazyryk culture, dating to roughly 2,500 years ago, preserve bodies covered in elaborate animal tattoos. Deer, griffins, mythical creatures rendered with remarkable artistic sophistication across the arms, legs, and torso. Archaeologist Natalia Polosmak, who excavated and studied these remains in extraordinary detail, has argued that the complexity and consistency of these designs suggest tattooing among the Pazyryk was not casual decoration, but carried specific cultural, possibly spiritual, or status-related meaning, applied according to established artistic conventions passed down within the culture. And in the Pacific, among cultures stretching from Polynesia to Borneo, tattooing developed into something far beyond decoration. Anthropologist Lars Krutak's research across Pacific Island cultures has documented tattoo traditions that functioned as permanent, visible records of a person's life, marking achievements, genealogy, rank, rites of passage, and tribal identity in designs so specific that a trained observer within the culture could read a person's entire social history directly from their skin. In Polynesian societies, the word tatau, from which the English word tattoo derives, described a practice so central to identity that the process itself was often a significant ceremonial and physically demanding rite of passage, particularly for young people transitioning into adulthood. Let's reconstruct a moment, because the experience of getting one of these ancient tattoos was nothing like what happens in a modern studio. You are part of a community somewhere in the ancient world. The specific place and era almost doesn't matter, because variations on this scene repeated across thousands of years and dozens of unconnected cultures, each arriving independently at strikingly similar tools and techniques. A specialist, often someone with particular status or spiritual authority within the group, prepares a sharpened bone or thorn point. Pigment, usually charcoal, sometimes plant-derived dye, sometimes mineral ochre, is mixed and readied. There is no anesthetic beyond whatever cultural or ritual context surrounds the moment. The puncturing is slow, deliberate, often accompanied by chanting, storytelling, or ceremony specific to what the tattoo represents. This is not a quick transaction. It can take hours, sometimes spread across multiple sessions over days or weeks, especially for elaborate designs covering large areas of the body. And when it's finished, you carry something that cannot be removed, cannot be hidden easily, and announces something true about you to anyone who can read the visual language of your culture. Maybe it marks pain you endured, like Ötzi's joints. Maybe it marks an animal spirit you're connected to, like the Pazyryk designs. Maybe it marks your lineage, your achievements, your transition into adulthood, like the tattoo traditions Krutak has documented across the Pacific. Whatever it marks, it is permanent in a world where almost nothing else about identity could be made permanent. No photographs, no written records for most of human history, no social media profile. Your skin was, in a very real sense, one of the only archives available, and your ancestors used it accordingly. This is also why tattoos appear, independently, across cultures that had no contact with each other whatsoever. The Inuit of the Arctic, the Maori of New Zealand, the Berbers of North Africa, the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, Ötzi in the Alps, the mummies of ancient Egypt. None of these cultures shared a common tattoo tradition passed between them. They arrived at the same basic technology and the same basic impulse entirely on their own, separated by oceans, continents, and thousands of years. When something this specific and this physically demanding emerges independently across the entire range of human geography, it suggests something deep and consistent in human psychology, not a single cultural trend that happened to spread. Now consider your own relationship with permanent marks on your body, whether you have any or not. The impulse Ötzi's community acted on 5,000 years ago, to take something true about a person's experience, identity, or pain and render it permanently visible on their skin, has not disappeared. It has only changed its tools. The bone point became a steel needle. The charcoal pigment became professionally formulated ink. The ceremonial context became, for many people, a personal ritual of choice rather than communal obligation. But the underlying human behavior, marking the body to make something internal external, permanent, and visible to others, runs in an unbroken line back through every culture on every continent, all the way to a man whose joints hurt, who lived and died over 5,000 years ago, and whose skin still tells us exactly where it hurt. His tattoos have outlived his language, his community, and his entire civilization. They have outlived almost everything else about who he was. And they are still, right now, being studied, photographed, and looked at by people who will never know his name. proof that the oldest known human impulse to mark the body permanently was never really about decoration at all. It was about making sure something true about you survives, even after you don't. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. What topic would you like me to explore next? Let me know in the comments below.